What up, y'all? This is Patrick Hayes, and the title of this video is Hacking Your Self-Awareness with this infinitely powerful subtle art. Now, what is this subtle art? This subtle art is actually the art of subtlety. And stick around to the end of this video, and this is really gonna click for you in a new way. Okay, so we live in a world that is absolutely crazy. Crazy sounds, crazy lights blinking all over the place. The media is shocking and overwhelming. It pulls people in. We have deep fried candy bars. It's like, if it is loud and flamboyant and extreme, it's all over the place, right? We see it everywhere. And as a result of this, what has happened is we've become desensitized. We've become desensitized to our subtle awarenesses. And by that, I mean our subtle thought processes, our subtle emotional processes, and our subtle physiological senses. Now, externally, people are still developing subtle awarenesses all the time. People are becoming extremely aware of the subtlety in the particular art that they may be crafting themselves in. So, if somebody's becoming a professional basketball player, they're getting very aware of the subtleties of motion and movement, and how to throw the ball with extreme delicacy and perfect spin so that it moves through the air with perfect aerodynamics and goes through the net. They're very aware of where their body is on the court, right? So these kinds of subtle awarenesses are being developed all the time. But these awarenesses are very much focused on external crafts. This could be business too. So like a master businessman is aware of all the subtleties of the market and the subtleties of sales, marketing, and all these details. And they use their awareness of subtlety actually to maximize their impact in whatever field they're working on. And this is very much a natural thing because this is ultimately what mastery is. Mastery is the development of subtle awarenesses and subtle skills in a particular domain of study, right? So if you ask any master, how they became a master, it's like, well, they kept practicing and practicing and practicing and learning more and more subtle aspects of the craft, so that then when they started performing in that craft with that vast awareness of all the subtlety in that craft, they become superior to the other people in the field. That is mastery, the development of subtle awarenesses and subtle skills in a particular domain. But what most people are not focusing on is actually on how to master their consciousness vehicle itself. So mastering our subtle thought processes, our subtle emotional processes, and our subtle physiological senses. This is actually like the vehicle itself for consciousness. So it's really funny because people spend so much time becoming masters at all these external crafts, but there's very little effort actually put towards mastering the actual command control center of our vehicle of consciousness, right? So our subtle thoughts, emotions, and physiological senses. Now you do see people that do master this, and these people are the masters up in the mountains of martial arts or different yogis or whatnot. And they've mastered their physiological senses and physiological skills to the point where, they can make their heart beat on command and slow their heartbeat down. They don't even need very much oxygen or air. Or they've mastered their mental skills to where they can completely clear their mind or completely focus on one thing at a time. And master their emotional skills so that they're not triggered or bothered by things that would normally bother most people. And this is like a form of mastering your actual consciousness vehicle. Just mastering an external craft while we're here on planet Earth is very much like driving an old beat-up go-kart around the city and focusing strictly on how to get from this destination to that destination and timing the red lights and green lights perfectly, and avoiding pedestrians as you're driving through the city, but not thinking at all about the actual vehicle that you're driving. Whereas if you focused on the vehicle, maybe you could realize, well, I could create like a helicopter. I could create even like a spaceship that can bilocate. And through working on mastering the subtle awarenesses of our consciousness vehicle itself, we actually start modifying this vehicle into something that's way more powerful than most people even realize. The human vessel is like the most insanely intricate and developed and advanced piece of technology that has ever been experienced ever, right? It's like absolutely insane. But most people aren't actually focusing on how to maximize the capacity of this vehicle. They're actually focusing more on like, well, how do I use just like a small aspect of this vehicle and of this consciousness in order to make a bunch of money or in order to juggle really good. And not that there's anything wrong with developing those crafts, and actually in developing external crafts, you do develop yourself internally also. But people aren't looking at it holistically. They're not actually working to develop their internal space. And developing your internal space is a process of developing subtle awarenesses. So if you ask any master of anything where the subtlety stops in their craft, any true master will tell you it never stops, it's infinite, right? Anybody that has ever mastered a craft, whether that's, baseball or whether that's poetry or whether that, it doesn't matter, whatever it is. If you ask them, where does the subtlety, where does your expansion of your awareness in that craft stop? They say it's infinite. It goes on forever. And as you keep delving deeper into something, you realize the rabbit hole goes deeper and deeper and deeper, and it's infinite. Actually, it starts moving into the numinous or the sacred dimensions of spirituality, because, we're connected to this infinite source that is actually creating everything. So when you actually think about all of the reality, all of the physical reality, all of the gross physical reality that we see, it's actually made up of infinite subtlety. Right? And as you master things in the physical world, you're actually getting to the subtle aspects of it so deeply that you start connecting to the spiritual aspects of it. And anybody that really is truly a master of something has a spiritual connection to that thing that they're a master of. Because you have to move into those spiritual dimensions and into the spiritual essences of the thing that you're working on to truly master it. So it's really interesting when you think of it like that, right? All of gross reality is made up of infinite subtlety, right? And mastery is basically being able to develop the awareness of that subtlety deeper and deeper and deeper until you develop what seems like a superhuman relationship to the particular domain that you've mastered. So where this leads me to is that we have all this crazy loud stuff, right? That's super desensitizing and extreme, right? And it's very gross. It's in the gross realm, right? But then we have this infinite subtlety that actually makes up the gross realm. And if you look at where humans are standing right now in our evolution, we're standing in this place where everything is so loud and so intense that if it gets much louder or more intense, it would actually destroy us. And what I mean by that is that if lights got much brighter, they would burn our retinas out. If sound got much louder, if you've ever been to, some of these crazy festivals with Function 1 sound systems, it would actually shake our cells apart, right? We're really pushed up against the edge of gross reality because it's intense, right? There's a lot of extreme stuff out there. But if you look in the other direction, towards subtlety, it's infinite, which is crazy to think about, right? Everybody's very much thinking about, how to make it more intense, how to make it more extreme. This is how you sell. This is how you improve things, make it more extreme, right? So think of a wine taster. This is a good example. A wine taster develops their subtle awareness. They develop their palate, right? And they drink wine until they're able to taste all of these things that a normal person couldn't taste. So actually they're moving towards subtlety and they're getting a lot more out of it. Whereas if you were to ask the average consciousness how to increase your taste of a particular thing, they would say, well, we'll add more ingredients, we'll add more sugar, we'll add more intensity to the flavor, right? But if you actually move in the other direction, right, you can develop your palate and you can open yourself up to a whole world of experience that was never there by moving towards subtlety as opposed to moving towards extremeness. And what happens when we start doing that? What happens when we start moving more towards the subtle? Well, then we start actually looking more like what mystical traditions teach. If you learn any form of mysticism, it's always going to be how to develop your subtle awarenesses. And it's all in relation to the consciousness vehicle. So it's in relation to your subtle physiological senses, your subtle emotions, and your subtle thought processes, right? But they're moving in the direction of the infinite because they're moving towards subtlety instead of moving towards extremeness. And so when we take this practice of developing subtlety and we turn it on to our actual consciousness vehicle, we start becoming aware of all sorts of different intuitions and different subtle awarenesses that turn us on. And this is in many ways like what enlightenment is. When we start developing the skills that you develop from mastering your subtle awarenesses, then you start becoming more enlightened. And then you start making more enlightened decisions. And then you see when your decisions are out of balance and out of harmony. Now, I'm not saying not to keep exploring the gross realm or that extreme things are bad. Those are beautiful and that's great, right? But if we're not also cultivating our subtle awarenesses, if we're not developing ourselves on that subtle level and moving towards the infinite from that direction, then what happens is we become completely desensitized to anything that isn't extreme, and we lose all of those subtle awarenesses and intuitions that we need to actually navigate in a harmonious and balanced way. And you see this as a major problem in the world. So you would think that, wouldn't our physiology tell us if we were eating something poisonous, right? Don't you think that we should have that awareness that, if we're eating a McDonald's cheeseburger, that it should tell us that this is actually chemicals, this isn't food, stay away from it, right? You'd think we would have that intuition, but We're actually being blinded by the extreme saturation of fats and oils and extreme sodium, and then the weird chemicals that are made to mimic things that can make us feel compelled to eat it. But if we develop our physiological senses and intuitions deeply enough, we would be repulsed by fast food, and I am now at this point. It's like, oh, that's gross, right? And a lot of people are, in the health revolution or whatnot. But this is just an example. It's like if somebody stabs a knife into you, your body's like, no. Well, why is your body not saying no to all these toxins that people are ingesting on a daily basis? And it's because we don't have those subtle intuitions. We don't have those subtle awarenesses. So in conclusion, what I want to say is that all of the subtle arts, qigong, yoga, meditation, breath work, positive thinking, all these kinds of things where we're focusing and paying attention to our internal subjective experience, right? Our subtle thoughts, our subtle emotions, and our subtle physiological senses. Any practice that really focuses on that and helps us develop that is going to develop us in a way that gives us a greater capacity for harmonious living. And this is something that the world needs extremely desperately right now. It needs people that are aware of themselves, that have developed their consciousness vehicle so that they can sense when things are out of harmony, and that they can be a leader, and they can help teach people how to live more harmoniously in the environments that we find ourselves in. Because if we don't connect to this higher source of knowledge, to this higher connection that guides us from the infinite, right? From the source of what creates everything, if we can't connect to that by honing and harnessing our subtle awarenesses on all three of these levels, then we're not going to be able to actually get the guidance that we need from our higher selves or from the universe, however you want to think of it, in order to actually navigate through all of the crazy drama that we're experiencing now in this world and actually get out on the other side with a more stable, more harmonious culture and society. So let me know how you like this video. If you have any questions, put them in the comments below. If you have any comments, please share. I'd love to hear what you have to say about this. If you haven't already, hit the bell button, or if you haven't subscribed, subscribe. Hit the bell button if you want to get notifications every time I release a video. And if you want me to make more videos like this or more videos on this particular topic, go ahead and let me know that also. So thanks so much for tuning in. This is Patrick Hayes. Like, subscribe, share with your friends, and I'll talk to you next time. One love.